The Ballad of the Iceworm Cocktail by Robert W. Service. To Dawson town came Percy Brown from London on the Thames. A pane of glass was in his eye, and stockings on his stems. Upon the shoulder of his coat a leather pad he wore, to rest his deadly rifle when it wasn't seeking gore. The which it must have often been for Major Percy Brown. According to his story, he was a hunter of renown, who in Murrumbidgee wilds had stalked the kangaroo, and killed the cassowary on the plains of Timbuktu. And now the Arctic fox he meant to follow to its lair. It was also his intent to beard the Arctic hare. Which facts concerning Major Brown I merely tell because I fain would have you know him for the Nimrod that he was. Now Skipper Gray and Deacon White were sitting in the shack, and sampling of the whiskey that pertained to Sheriff Black. Said Skipper Gray, "I want to say a word about this Brown." The piker sticking out his chest as if he owned the town. Said Sheriff Black, "He has no lack of frigorated cheek. He called himself a sourdough when he'd just been here a week." Said Deacon White, "Methinks you're right, and so I have a plan, by which I hope to prove tonight the mettle of this man. Just meet me where the hoochbird sings, and though our ways be rude, we'll make a proper sourdough out of this Piccadilly dude." Within the Malamute saloon were gathered all the gang. The fun was fast and furious, and the hoochbird sang. In fact, the night's hilarity had almost reached its crown, when into its storm center breezed the gallant Major Brown. And at the apparition, with its glass eye and +4s, from 50 alcoholic throats responded 50 roars. With shouts of stark amazement, and with whoops of sheer delight, they surged around the stranger, but first was Deacon White. "We welcome you," he cried aloud, "to this great white land. The Arctic Brotherhood is proud to grip you by the hand. Yea, sportsmen of the bulldog breed, from trails of far away, to Yukoners this is indeed a memorable day. Our jubilation to express vocabularies fail. Boys hail the great Chicago," and the boys responded, "Hail." "And now," continued Deacon White to blushing Major Brown, "behold assembled the elite of cream of Dawson town. And one ambition fills their hearts and makes their bosoms glow. They want to make you, honored sir, a bona fide sourdough. The same, some say, is one who's seen the Yukon ice go out, but most profound authorities the definition doubt. And so to the general notion of this meeting, Major Brown, a sourdough is a guy who drinks an iceworm cocktail down." "By gad," responded Major Brown, "that's ripping, don't you know? I've always felt I'd like to be a certified sourdough. And though I haven't any doubt your winter's awfully nice, Mayfair, I fear, may miss me ere the break-up of your ice. Yet, pray excuse my ignorance of matters such as these. A cocktail I can understand, but what's an iceworm, please?" Said Deacon White, "It's not strange that you should fail to know, since iceworms are peculiar to the mountain of blue snow. Within the polar rim it rears a solitary peak, and in the smoke of early spring a spectacle unique. Like flame it leaps upon the sight, and thrills you through and through, for though its cone is piercing white, its base is blazing blue. Yet all is clear as you draw near, for coyly peering out are hosts and hosts of tiny worms, each indigo of snout. And as no nourishment they find to keep themselves alive, They masticate each other's tails till just the tough survive. Yet on this stern and Spartan fare so rapidly they grow, that some attain 6 inches by the melting of the snow. Then when the tundra glows to green and smaller heads appear, they burrow down and are not seen until another year. A toughish yarn, laughed Major Brown, as well you may admit. I'd like to see this little beast before I swallow it. 'Tis easy done, said Deacon White. Ho, barman, haste and bring us forth some pickled iceworms of the vintage of last spring. But sadly still was Barman Bill, then sighed as one befrit. There's been a run on cocktails, boss, there ain't an iceworm left. Yet wait, by gosh, it seems to me that some of extra size were picked and put away to show the scientific guys. Then deeply in a drawer he sought, and there he found a jar, the which with due and proper pride he put upon the bar. And in it wreathed in greasy rings or rolled into a ball, a score of grey and greasy things were drowned in alcohol. Their bellies were a billows blue, their eyes a bulbous red. Their back were grey and gross were they, and hideous of head. And when with gusto and a fork the barman speared one out, it must have gone 4 inches from its tail tip to its snout. Cried Deacon White with deep delight, Say, isn't that a beaut? I think it is, sniffed Major Brown, a most disgusting brute. Its very sight gives me the pip, I'll bet my bally hat. You're only spoofing me, old chap, I'll never swallow that. The hell I won't, said Deacon White. Hey, Bill, that fellow's fine. Fix up 4 iceworm cocktails and just put that wop in mine. So Barman Bill got busy, and with sacerdotal air his art's supreme achievement he proceeded to prepare. His silver cups like sickle moon went waving to and fro, and 4 celestial cocktails soon were shining in a row. And in the starry depths of each, artistically piled, a fat and juicy iceworm raising its mottled mug and smiled. Then closer pressed the peering crown, suspended was the fun, as Skipper Gray in a courteous way said, Stranger, please take one. But with a gesture of disgust the Major shook his head. You can't bluff me, you'll never drink that ghastly thing, he said. You'll see all right, said Deacon White, and held his cocktail high, till its iceworms seemed to wriggle and to wink a wicked eye. Then Skipper Gray and Sheriff Black each lifted up a glass, while through the tense and quiet crown a tremor seemed to pass. Drink, stranger, drink, boomed Deacon White. Proclaim you're of the best, a doughty sourdough who has passed the iceworm cocktail test. And at these words, with all eyes fixed on gaping Major Brown, like a libation of the gods, each dashed his cocktail down. The Major gasped with horror as the trio smacked their lips. He twiddled at his eyeglass with unsteady fingertips. Into his starry cocktail with a look of woe he peered, and its iceworm to his thinking most incontinently leered. Yet on him were 100 eyes, and though no one spoke aloud, for hushed with expectation was the waiting, watching crowd. The Major's fumbling hand went forth, the gang prepared to cheer. The Major's faltering hand went back, the mob prepared to jeer. The Major gripped his gleaming glass and laid it to his lips, and as despairfully he took some nauseated sips. From out its coil of crapulence the iceworm raised its head. Its muzzle was a murky blue, its eyes a ruby red. And then a roughneck bellowed forth, This stiff comes here and struts, as if he bought the blasted north. Just let him show his guts. And with a roar the mob proclaimed, Chicago Major Brown, reveal that you're of sourdough stuff and drink your cocktail down. The Major took another look, then quickly closed his eyes, for even as he raised his glass, he felt his gorge arise. Aye, even though his sight was sealed, in fancy he could see that grey and greasy thing that reared and sneered in mockery. Yet round him ringed the callous crowd, and how they seemed to gloat. It must be done. He swallowed hard. The brute was at his throat. He choked. He gulped. Thank God at last he'd got the horror down. Then from the crowd went up a roar. Hooray for Sourdough Brown! With shouts they raised him shoulder high and gave a rousing cheer. But though they praised him to the sky, the Major did not hear. Amid their demonstrative glee, delight he seemed to lack. Indeed, it almost seemed that he was keeping something back. A clammy sweat was on his brow and pallid as a sheet. I feel I must be going now, he'd plaintively repeat. Aye, though with drinks and smokes galore they tempted him to stay. With a sudden bolt he gained the door and made his getaway. And ere next night his story was the talk of Dawson town. But gone and reft of glory was the wrathful Major Brown. For that ice-worm, so they told him, of such formidable size, was a stick of stained spaghetti with 2 red ink spots for eyes.